The baby was left on Luca Romano's doorstep at 2:17 inches the morning. Boston was buried under freezing rain, the kind that turned black iron gates slick and made the city lights bleed across the pavement like broken glass. The Romano mansion stood above the harbor, silent and guarded, surrounded by stone walls, security cameras, and men who carried themselves like shadows with pulses. Nothing entered that property without permission. Nothing. Yet somehow, beneath the carved stone archway of the front entrance, wrapped in a white blanket, soaked at the edges from the rain, was a crying baby girl. Luca Romano stood over her in a black coat, his expression unreadable. He did not move for several seconds. Around him, his guards waited with guns lowered but ready. One of them had already checked the package for wires, poison, hidden devices. Another had scanned the road. Another was reviewing security footage that had gone black for exactly 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Long enough for someone to walk through the gate of Boston's most feared man and leave a child where no enemy should have been able to breathe. The baby cried again, small fists trembling inside the blanket. Luca crouched slowly. There was a note pinned near her chest. Not a demand, not a threat, just 3 words. Protect her now. Luca's jaw tightened. Then he saw the name embroidered into the blanket in pale blue thread. Grace Bennett. He looked at the baby, then at the name. The rain slid down the side of his face, cold and silver under the mansion lights. Find her, he said. His voice was calm. That was why every man around him became afraid. By sunrise, Grace Bennett was making paper snowflakes with 12 preschoolers in a bright classroom in South Boston, unaware that her name had just been found wrapped around a baby at the center of a Mafia war. She was 28, soft-spoken when she wanted to be, stubborn when she needed to be, and beloved by children because she listened like every small fear mattered. Her life was simple because she had built it that way. She rented a small apartment above a bakery. She drank tea instead of coffee. She spent her evenings grading art projects and trying not to think about how quiet her apartment felt after dark. Nothing about Grace Bennett belonged in Luca Romano's world until 3 black SUVs stopped outside Little Lantern Preschool. Parents froze on the sidewalk. Teachers stopped mid-sentence. Grace was helping a little boy glue cotton balls onto a paper cloud when the classroom door opened and the principal stepped in. Pale. Grace, she whispered. There are men here to see you. Grace looked past her. A tall man in a black suit stood in the hallway. Behind him were 2 more. No smiles, no badges, no explanation. Grace's hand instinctively moved in front of the children. You can't come in here, she said. The man stopped. That surprised him. Most people lowered their voices around Romano men. Grace Bennett raised hers. I said, she repeated. You can't come in here. The man studied her for 1 second, then nodded toward the hallway. Mr. Romano needs to speak with you. Grace's stomach tightened. I don't know any Mr. Romano. You do now. The children stared. Grace forced her voice to stay steady. I'm not going anywhere with strangers. The man's expression did not change. Then a deeper voice came from behind him. She is not going with you. The suited man stepped aside. Luca Romano entered the hallway like darkness had learned manners. He was tall, composed, dressed in a black overcoat over a charcoal suit, his dark hair damp from the rain. His face was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, all sharp lines and controlled violence. His eyes found Grace immediately, not curious, not admiring, accusing. Grace felt the room shift around him. She hated that she felt it. The children went silent without being told. Luca's gaze moved from Grace to the children hiding behind her. Something flickered across his face. Restraint. He looked back at her. Grace Bennett? Yes. Come outside. No. His brows lowered slightly. The hallway went still. Grace lifted her chin. You don't walk into a preschool and command teachers like you own the place. One of his men inhaled sharply. Luca did not blink. I don't own the place, he said. But someone used your name to get close to my family. Grace's throat tightened. What are you talking about? Luca stepped closer, stopping just outside the classroom threshold. Close enough that she could smell rain and expensive wool. Far enough that he did not cross the invisible line she had drawn around the children. "A baby was left at my home last night," he said, "wrapped in a blanket with your name on it." Grace stared at him. For 1 second, the classroom disappeared. A baby? His eyes stayed on hers. A girl, maybe 6 months old. Grace's face went pale. "Is she okay?" The question came too fast, too genuine. Luca noticed. "She is alive." "That's not what I asked." For the first time, his expression shifted. "Barely. She is safe." Grace exhaled, one hand going to her chest. Then fear came rushing in. "My name? Embroidered. I don't know anything about this." "That remains to be seen." Her eyes flashed. "You think I abandoned a baby on your doorstep? I think someone wanted me to find you. Then maybe you should be looking for that person instead of frightening children." Lukas Hase held hers. The anger in her voice was not theatrical. It was protective, instinctive. A woman who had never held a gun but would stand between danger and the small bodies behind her. He should have found that inconvenient. Instead, it held his attention. A phone vibrated in his hand. He looked at the screen, his face hardened. One of his men leaned close and whispered something. Grace saw the change before she understood it. Luca moved toward her. "Get the children away from the windows." "What?" Now, the first shot cracked through the glass before she could answer. The classroom exploded into screams. Luca moved faster than thought. He grabbed Grace by the waist and pulled her down, covering her body with his as glass rained over the floor. His men rushed in, shielding the children, dragging tables into barricades. Grace tried to twist free. "The kids, they're covered," Luca said, voice low and steady above her. "Stay down." Another shot hit the wall. A child sobbed. Grace shoved against Luca's chest. "Let me go." His eyes cut to hers. "No." The word was cold, but his body stayed between her and the windows. When the gunfire stopped, Grace was shaking beneath him, her cheek pressed to his coat, her hands clutching fabric she did not remember grabbing. Luca looked down at her, and for one brief moment, the suspicion in his eyes gave way to something more dangerous. Concern. Then it vanished. He stood and pulled her up with him. Everyone out through the back. Grace tried to go to the children, but Luca caught her wrist. She looked down at his hand. He released her immediately, not because she asked, because he saw her flinch. His voice lowered. "You are the target now." "No," she whispered. "Yes. I'm a preschool teacher." "Not anymore." By noon, Grace Bennett was inside Luca Romano's mansion with a baby in her arms and no idea how her life had become a locked room guarded by men with guns. The baby stopped crying the moment Grace held her. That was the first thing Luca noticed. The second was that Grace knew how to hold her without thinking. One hand supporting the head, one hand at the back, gentle bounce, soft voice, no panic. The third was that the baby had his brother's eyes. Luca stood in the nursery doorway, silent, while Grace sat in a rocking chair near the window. Outside, rain blurred the harbor. Inside, the room had been prepared in less than an hour. Crib, blankets, formula, monitors, a small nightlight shaped like a moon. Power could buy anything quickly, except answers. Grace looked down at the baby, her expression soft with worry. "She's exhausted," she said. "When was she fed?" "Doctor came at 4. "That's not what I asked." Luca's mouth tightened. Grace looked up at him. "Babies aren't evidence, Mr. Romano." "Luca, I didn't ask for your first name. You'll need it if you're staying in my house." "I'm not staying." "You are." The baby stirred. Grace lowered her voice instantly. "Do not use that tone near her." Luca stared. No one corrected his tone. Certainly not in his own mansion. Certainly not while holding the child. That might be the key to destroying his family. But Grace did not look afraid enough to stop. That fascinated him. "You were named on her blanket," Luca said. "I saw. You calm her. I work with children. You were attacked less than an hour after I found you. Then maybe your enemies followed you." "They did." Grace went still. Luca stepped into the room. And now they know you matter. I don't matter. He looked at the baby in her arms. Someone disagrees. Grace's fingers tightened around the blanket. It was white, soft, and expensive. The name Grace Bennett was stitched with careful blue thread along the edge. She had never seen it before, but something about the thread made her stomach twist. It looked handmade, not factory, not random, personal. Does she have a name? Grace asked. No. Grace looked down at the baby. The baby blinked back at her, round-cheeked and quiet now, tiny fist wrapped around the edge of the blanket. She needs one. She needs protection. She needs both. Luca said nothing. Grace looked back at him. You really don't know who she is? His face became unreadable. I have a suspicion. What suspicion? The door opened before he could answer. An older woman entered, elegant and sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled into a knot. She wore black pearls and carried herself like a queen who had survived too many funerals. Luca's mother, Isabella Romano. Her eyes landed on the baby. She stopped breathing. Matteo? She whispered. Luca's jaw tightened. Mother, Grace looked between them. Who's Matteo? Isabella came closer slowly. Eyes wet. My son, she said. Luca's younger brother. Grace looked down at the baby. Is this his child? No one answered. The silence was enough. Luca turned toward the window. His reflection looked carved from stone. Matteo was murdered 8 months ago, he said. Grace held the baby closer. 8 months. A 6-month-old baby. A murdered brother. A blanket with her name. The room suddenly felt too small. Why would someone bring her to you now? Luca looked at her through the reflection in the glass. To start a war. That night, Grace tried to leave. She waited until the mansion grew quiet, until the baby slept in the crib, until the rain softened against the windows. Then she found her coat, her phone, and the least guarded hallway. She made it as far as the side entrance before Luca's voice stopped her. You chose the wrong door. Grace turned. He stood at the end of the corridor, sleeves rolled to his forearms, his black shirt open at the throat. No tie, no coat. Still, somehow more intimidating than any man she had ever met. She swallowed. Were you watching me? Yes. At least lie. I don't lie when the truth is more useful. I am not your prisoner. No. Then open the door. No. Anger rose fast and hot. You cannot keep me here. I can. That doesn't mean you should. He walked closer, slowly, like he was giving her every chance to run, even though both of them knew she couldn't. 3 men attacked a preschool today to get to you, he said. They did not care how many children were in that room. If you walk out of this house, they will take you, torture you, and find out whether you know something. I don't know anything. Then they will kill you disappointed. Grace went silent. The cruelty of it was not in his voice. It was in the world he understood too well. You live like this? She asked. Yes. And you think that gives you the right to decide for everyone else? No. Luca said. It gives me the burden. She hated the answer. She hated that it sounded lonely. Grace looked away. I had a life this morning. I know. No. You don't. You have walls and guards and men who say yes before you finish speaking. I had finger paint on my shoes. I had parents trusting me with their children. I had a classroom that felt safe until your world shattered the windows. His face changed at that. Not defensiveness, guilt. Controlled, buried, but there. I will repair the school. She laughed once. You can't buy back safety. No, he said. But I can make the men who took it regret breathing. The words should have frightened her. They did. But not as much as the part of her that believed he meant it for the children, too. Grace took one step closer. If I stay, it's for the baby, not because you ordered me. Luca's eyes held hers. Agreed. And I'm not sleeping in a locked room. The room locks from the inside, and no one touches her without me or the doctor present. She may be my blood. She is a baby before she is anyone's blood. Silence. Then Luca nodded. Grace blinked. Surprised. You agree? You are right. She did not know what to do with that. Luca opened the side door himself. Cold rain blew into the hallway. Grace stared at the darkness outside. He stepped aside. "You may leave." She looked at him. His expression was calm, but his eyes were not. "If you do," he said quietly, "take the armored car. Take 2 guards. And do not tell yourself independence requires walking into death alone." Grace stood between the warm mansion and the rain. For the first time that day, he did not force her. That was why she stayed. Over the next week, Grace learned that Luca Romano's mansion was both fortress and prison. The nursery had cameras outside the door, but none inside because she had threatened to tear them down. The kitchen was always full of silent staff. The gates opened only after 3 checks. Men stood in hallways like statues. Every window held a reflection of danger. The baby, whom Grace began calling Lily, became the strange heartbeat of the house. Lily smiled for Grace first. Isabella cried when she saw it. Luca watched from the doorway and pretended not to care, but Grace noticed things. He always paused when Lily cried. He always looked toward the nursery before leaving the mansion. He never entered without knocking. He never touched Lily unless Grace placed her in his arm. The first time she did, he held the baby like she was made of glass and consequence. "She won't break," Grace said softly. Luca looked down at Lily. "Everything breaks." Grace studied his face. "You loved your brother." His jaw flexed. "That is not a question." "No." "Then don't ask it like one." Grace should have stepped back. Instead, she stayed. "What happened to him?" Luca's arms tightened slightly around Lily. "He trusted someone." "That's all?" "That's usually enough." Grace's heart moved before she could stop it. There was grief beneath his control. Not soft grief, violent grief. The kind that had nowhere to go. So it became rules, walls, and revenge. A scream cut through the house. One of the maids. Luca handed Lily back to Grace instantly and moved. By the time Grace reached the hallway, guards were already surrounding the east wing. On the nursery door, written in black paint, were 4 words. "Give us the air." Grace's blood went cold. Luca stared at the message. No one spoke. Then he turned to his men. "Find how they entered." His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Grace held Lily against her chest. "They were inside the house?" Luca looked at the baby, then at Grace. "Not anymore." That night, the mansion locked down. Steel shutters covered the lower windows. Guards doubled. Phones were confiscated and replaced with secured devices. No one entered or left without Luca's personal approval. Grace stood in the nursery, rocking Lily, while Luca watched workers remove the ruined door. "You said this house was safe," she whispered. "It was. That is not comforting." "No." "Do you ever say anything that is?" He looked at her for 1 second. Something almost like humor touched his face. "No." Grace almost smiled. Almost. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the nursery. Lily began to cry. Luca was beside Grace before the emergency lights flickered red. "Stay behind me. I have Lily." "That is why." A sound came from the hallway. Metal scraping, then gunfire. Luca pulled Grace and Lily into the walk-in closet, shut the reinforced door, and placed his body in front of them. The emergency lights painted his face crimson. Outside, men shouted. Something crashed. Lily wailed against Grace's shoulder. Grace whispered. "She's scared." Luca's eyes were on the door. "So-N-E." She looked up. He did not seem to realize he had said it. Another shot hit the outer wall. Grace flinched. Luca turned then, finally looking at her instead of the threat. "Grace." She met his eyes. "If anything happens to me, press the red button under the shelf. It opens a passage to the garage. Take Lily and run with Marco." "Who is Marco?" "The only man here I trust with my life." Her voice shook. "What about yours?" His gaze dropped to Lily, then returned to Grace. "My life is the door." The words lodged somewhere deep. The attack ended in 7 minutes. 7 men entered the property, none left alive. Luca returned to the nursery with blood on his white shirt and a cut near his temple. Grace stood when she saw him. "Are you hurt?" "No." "You're bleeding." "Not enough." "That is not an answer." It is mine. She stepped close, furious and shaking, Lily asleep against her shoulder now. You don't get to die dramatically in front of a baby and call it strategy. Luca stared at her. Then, slowly, he reached toward a smear of blood on Lily's blanket. He stopped before touching it. Grace noticed. His hand lowered. I won't let them take her, he said. Grace's voice softened despite herself. On me? His eyes met hers. The silence answered too much. Luca looked away first. That was how she knew he was in danger. Not from bullets, from her. The public scandal began 2 days later. A photo appeared online of Grace entering Luca's mansion with Lily in her arms. By morning, every local outlet was calling her the secret lover of Boston's most dangerous man. Some claimed Lily was her child. Others claimed she had stolen the baby. A few implied she had traded a preschool classroom for a criminal empire. Grace read the headlines in Luca's office, her face burning. This will ruin me. Luca stood behind his desk, surrounded by lawyers and security advisors. No, he said, it will protect you. Grace turned slowly. What? If the world believes you are mine, fewer men will risk touching you. Yours? The room went silent. Luca dismissed everyone with one glance. When the door closed, Grace walked toward him. I am not a strategy. No. I am not your mistress. No, I am not yours. His eyes darkened. No, he said, quieter. You are not. The restraint in his voice made the air feel thin. Grace should have stepped back. Instead, she asked, Then why does everyone think you look at me like I am? Luca's expression became dangerous because I am failing to hide it. The confession landed between them like a lit match. Grace's breath caught. He moved closer, slowly enough to give her time to retreat. She didn't. Do you know what happens to things I want? He asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. What? They become targets. Maybe I was already one. His gaze lowered to her mouth, then snapped back to her eyes. I should send you away. But you won't. No. Why? He was silent for a long moment. Then Lily cried through the baby monitor. Both of them looked toward it. The spell broke. Luca stepped back. Because she trusts you, he said. Grace told herself that answer hurt because it was practical, not because she had wanted another one. The hidden truth came from a woman who was supposed to be dead. At midnight, Marco brought Luca a secure tablet with a live video call. Grace stood near the fireplace holding Lily, while Isabella sat rigid in an armchair. On the screen appeared a woman with hollow cheeks, a bruised face, and terrified eyes. Luca went still. Clara. Grace looked at him. Who is she? His voice was cold. Matteo's wife. The room froze. Isabella made a sound like grief breaking open. Clara began crying the moment she saw the baby. My daughter, she whispered. Grace held Lily tighter without meaning to. Luca stepped toward the screen. You were buried beside my brother. They buried an empty coffin, Clara said. Adrian Voss took me before the funeral. He kept me alive until Lily was born. Luca's eyes turned black with rage. Grace felt the temperature in the room change. Why leave her here? Luca asked. Clara looked at Grace. Because of her. Grace's stomach dropped. I don't know you. No, Clara said. But your mother knew mine. Grace went still. My mother died when I was 12. She was a nurse at St. Agnes. She helped women disappear from violent men. She helped me hide during my pregnancy. Grace's hand went to Lily's back. No. Her mother had worked double shifts, came home exhausted, kept envelopes in a locked drawer, whispered into the phone at night. Grace had thought it was debt, loneliness, survival. She wrote your name on the blanket, Clara said. She told me if anything happened, find Grace Bennett. She protects children. She will know what to do. Grace's eyes filled. My mother has been dead 16 years. Clara's face crumpled. Then someone kept the blanket until now. Luca's voice cut through the room. Adrian. Clara nodded. He wants the Romanos and the Voss family at war. Lily is Matteo's heir. If he controls her, he controls claims, alliances, money. If he kills her, he ends Matteo's line and blames you. Luca's hand closed into a fist. Where are you? Clara looked off screen, terrified. I don't have long. Where? Before she could answer, a gunshot sounded through the call. The screen went black. Isabella screamed. Grace covered Lily's ears. Luca stood motionless, every inch of him calm, but Grace saw his eyes. Something inside him had gone beyond rage. He walked toward the door. Grace followed. Where are you going? To end this. No. He turned. She stepped in front of him with Lily in her arms. You go alone? You become exactly what Adrian wants. Move. No. His eyes burned. Grace. Luca. No one spoke his name like that. Not as a command. Not as a plea. Not as if she believed there was a man beneath the weapon. You told me your life is the door, she said. Then stop acting like the only way to protect us is to break yourself against every bullet. His jaw tightened. I know how to win wars, and I know how children lose them. That hit him. Grace stepped closer. Lily already lost her father. Maybe her mother. Don't make her lose the only uncle willing to stand between her and the world. For the first time, Luca looked at the baby not as bloodline, not as evidence, not as war. As family, his voice lowered. What would you have me do? Think. The word was simple. The fact that he listened changed everything. The next move was not violence. It was theater. Luca announced a public charity event at the Romano mansion for the restoration of St. Agnes Children's Wing, the same hospital where Grace's mother had once worked. Reporters called it a desperate attempt to soften his image. Rivals called it bait. They were right. Grace walked into the ballroom that night wearing a midnight blue dress Isabella had chosen. Lily asleep in a secured nursery upstairs, watched by guards and a doctor. Luca waited at the bottom of the staircase in a black suit. When he saw Grace, his expression did not change, but his hand tightened around his glass. Grace noticed. So did every enemy in the room. Dangerous dress, he said quietly when she reached him. Dangerous room. Stay close. Is that an order? His Chaser held hers. A request. That was worse. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, champagne, and concealed hatred. Politicians smiled too widely. Businessmen avoided Luca's eyes. Women whispered when Grace passed. Then Adrian Voss arrived. He was elegant, silver-haired, and charming in the way knives were beautiful before they cut. His gaze moved over Grace slowly. So this is the teacher who tamed the wolf. Luca stepped closer to her. Grace felt it before she saw it. Possession. Protection. A warning wrapped in silence. I don't tame animals, Grace said. I teach children. Adrian smiled. And yet here you are, holding court in a house built by blood. Better than hiding behind other people's. The smile faded. Luca looked at Grace with something dangerously close to pride. Adrian leaned in. You have no idea what he is. Grace did not look away. I know exactly what he is. Do you? Her throat tightened. She thought of Luca holding Lily like glass. Luca standing in front of the nursery door. Luca stopping his hand before touching her because he feared becoming another cage. Yes, she said. He is the man you're afraid to face directly. For 1 second, Adrian's mask slipped. Then the lights went out. The ballroom plunged into darkness. A baby cried through the speakers. Lily's cry. Grace's blood froze. Luca moved instantly. Nursery. They ran. Gunfire erupted downstairs as Luca's men clashed with infiltrators. Grace lifted her dress and sprinted barefoot up the marble stairs. Luca stayed beside her, gun in hand, face carved from fury. The nursery door was open. The crib was empty. Grace stopped breathing. On the white sheet was a single blue thread and a phone. It rang. Luca answered. Adrian's voice filled the room. You have 10 minutes, Luca. Come to the harbor alone, or the child disappears into the water like your brother did. Grace's knees weakened. Luca looked at her. His face was calm, too calm. "No," she whispered. He lowered the phone. "Grace. No. I have to go. No. You have to stop letting him write the ending." His eyes flickered. Grace looked at the open window, the rain hitting the sill, the muddy trace on the floor. Then she saw something under the rocking chair. A teeny pink sock, not Lily's. Grace picked it up. Her heart pounded. This wasn't a kidnapping. Luca stared. What? Grace moved to the closet, pulled it open, and found the hidden service panel behind the shelves. "I teach preschool," she said, voice shaking but sharp. "Do you know what children do when adults panic?" Luca stepped closer. "They hide." Grace pushed the panel open. Inside the narrow space, a young maid trembled with Lily in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," the girl sobbed. "They paid my brother's hospital bills. They told me to take her, but I couldn't. I couldn't." Grace took Lily, shaking with relief. Luca's men seized the maid, but Grace turned sharply. "Don't hurt her." Luca looked at the girl, then at Grace. The old Luca would have made an example. This Luca saw Grace holding Lily and understood that mercy could be power too. "Take her downstairs," he said. "Alive." Grace exhaled. Then the window shattered. A sniper's bullet hit the wall beside Grace's head. Luca grabbed her and Lily, throwing them to the floor beneath his body. His face was inches from hers. For one terrifying second, everything stopped. Lily cried between them. Grace stared up at Luca. He was breathing hard now, not from exertion, from fear. Adrian had not come for Lily. He had come for Grace. That was the moment Luca's denial ended. He carried Grace and Lily through the mansion while bullets struck marble and glass behind them. His body shielded both, one arm around Grace, the other guiding her head down. In the garage, black SUVs roared to life. "Where are we going?" Grace asked. Luca looked at her. "Somewhere no one knows exists." The safe house stood on a stormy coastline north of Boston, hidden beyond pine trees and stone cliffs. Waves slammed against the rocks below. The house was old, gray, and guarded by men who did not use headlights. Inside, the fireplace burned low. Grace sat on the couch, with Lily sleeping against her chest. Luca stood across the room, soaked from rain, blood drying near his collarbone where glass had cut him. He had not spoken since they arrived. Grace finally said, "You can stop looking at the windows for 1 second. No. You need stitches. No. You're impossible." "Yes." She stood carefully, laid Lily in a portable crib, then walked to Luca with the first aid kit. He watched her approach like she was more dangerous than every assassin Adrian had sent. "Sit down," she said. He did. That startled them both. Grace cleaned the cut near his collarbone. His skin was warm beneath her fingers. His breathing changed, barely, but she felt it. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "No. Liar." He looked up at her. "I thought you preferred honesty." "I do." "Then yes. Here hen, still." "Good," she whispered. His brows lowered. "It means you're still human." For a long moment, neither moved. Rain hammered the windows. The fire cracked softly. Lily breathed in tiny, peaceful sounds. From the crib, Luca's voice was low. "I cannot want this." Grace knew what he meant. This room, this quiet, the baby safe, her hands on his skin, a life that did not taste like blood. "Then don't," she said. His eyes searched hers. "Is that what you want?" Grace's throat tightened. "I want to stop being afraid of wanting things I shouldn't." Luca slowly raised his hand. He almost touched her waist. Stopped. Grace looked down at his hand, suspended between restraint and surrender. Then she placed her hand over his. His control broke silently. He pulled her closer, not harshly, not carelessly, but with the desperation of a man who had spent his life surviving hunger and suddenly found warmth. Their foreheads touched. No kiss. Not yet. Just breath. Silence. A promise neither said aloud. Then Lily cried. Grace laughed softly. almost broken. Luca closed his eyes. She has terrible timing, he murmured. Grace smiled, through tears. She's a baby. She is a Romano. Then she definitely has terrible timing. For the first time since Grace had met him, Luca almost smiled. Almost. The final betrayal came from inside his blood. Marco arrived at the safe house before dawn with news. Adrian Voss had not acted alone. He had help from Luca's uncle, Salvatore Romano, the man who had been advising the family since Matteo's death. Salvatore had arranged the security failures, leaked Grace's location, and hidden Clara's survival. Why? Inheritance. If Lily lived, Matteo's shares passed to her. If Lily died, and Luca went to war, Salvatore could seize control of the family empire during the chaos. Grace listened from the staircase, holding Lily. Luca stood in the kitchen, silent. Then he picked up a glass and crushed it in his hand. Blood ran down his fingers. Grace came down the stairs. Luca. He did not turn. I trusted him, he said. The words were flat. That made them worse. Grace handed Lily to Isabella, who had just arrived with 2 guards, then walked to Luca and took his bleeding hand. He looked at her like he did not understand why she would touch something so violent. She wrapped a towel around his palm. Don't disappear into this, she said. His voice was hollow. This is what I am. No. This is what they trained you to become when they kept taking everyone you loved. His eyes lifted. Grace's own eyes filled, but she did not look away. You are allowed to be angry. You are not allowed to become empty. Something in his face cracked, just slightly. Enough. He leaned closer, voice low and rough. If they had taken you tonight, they didn't. If they had, Luca, his hand rose to her face. This time, he did not stop. His thumb touched her cheek with devastating care. I would have burned Boston to the ground. I know. That should frighten you. It does. His eyes darkened, but not enough to make me leave. He kissed her then. Not gently at first, not softly. It was the kiss of a man who had mistaken control for survival and finally found the one person who made him want to lose it. Grace gripped his shirt, trembling, kissing him back with fear and want, and every impossible feeling she had been trying to deny. When he pulled away, his forehead stayed against hers. I am not safe, he whispered. Grace's voice broke. Neither is loving you. No. But Lily is sleeping upstairs because you stood in front of bullets. She is sleeping because you saw what I missed. They stayed like that in the dim kitchen, surrounded by rain, blood, and betrayal. Then Luca stepped back. His eyes had changed, not softer, clearer. Tonight, he said, we end it. The climax came at St. Agnes Hospital, where Grace's mother had once helped desperate women disappear. Adrian and Salvatore planned to move Clara through the abandoned maternity wing beneath the hospital, then kill her and leak evidence blaming Luca. If Clara died, Lily's claim would be contested. If Luca attacked, the authorities and rival families would descend. But Grace knew the old wing. Her mother had once brought her there after school, hiding her in the nurse's lounge with crayons and apple juice during double shifts. Grace remembered the service tunnels, the laundry elevators, the chapel corridor with the blue-stained glass. She became the key. Luca hated it. You are not going in. Grace stood in the safe house kitchen, wearing a black coat, hair tied back, eyes steady. Yes, I am. No. You need someone who knows the building. I need you alive. You need Clara alive too. His jaw tightened. I will not use you as bait. I'm not bait. I'm the person your enemies keep underestimating. Luca stepped close. I don't. Her heart twisted. I know. That made it harder. At midnight, they entered St. Agnes through the old chapel entrance, rain turning to snow over Boston. Luca's men moved through the shadows. Grace led them through a narrow corridor lined with peeling paint and old hospital signs. The abandoned maternity wing smelled like dust, bleach, and ghosts. They found Clara in a locked room, alive but weak, tied to a chair beneath a flickering, fluorescent light. Grace reached her first. Clara sobbed when she saw Lily was not with them. "She's safe," Grace whispered. "Your daughter is safe." Then Salvatore stepped from the shadows with a gun. "Touching," he said. Luca appeared at the far end of the hallway. His gun was already raised. "Uncle," Salvatore smiled sadly. "You were always too emotional for the throne." Luca's face showed nothing. Grace knew better now. His stillness was pain wearing armor. "You killed Matteo," Luca said. "I allowed necessity. You sold his child. I preserved the family." Luca's voice went colder. "You were never family." Adrian emerged behind Grace, pressing a gun to her side. Luca's eyes moved to her. Everything in him changed. Adrian smiled. "There it is, the weakness." Grace kept her breathing steady. Luca did not lower his weapon, but his hand tightened around it. Adrian leaned close to Grace's ear. "Tell him to kneel." Grace looked at Luca. For 1 second, she saw the war inside him. The boss who could not surrender. The man who would kneel if it saved her. Grace whispered, "Don't." Adrian pressed the gun harder. "Say it." Grace lifted her chin. Then she did what preschool teachers did every day. She created a distraction. She knocked the metal tray beside her with her elbow. The crash echoed through the hall. Luca fired. Marco moved. Grace dropped. Chaos erupted. Salvatore shot Luca in the shoulder. Adrian grabbed Grace by the hair and dragged her toward the stairwell. Luca, bleeding, came after them like death had put on a black suit. Adrian shoved Grace onto the rooftop. Snow whipped across the hospital roof. Boston glittered below, cold and distant. A helicopter waited, with blades turning. Adrian pulled Grace against him. Luca stepped onto the roof, blood soaking through his coat. "Let her go," he said. Adrian laughed. "You would trade the Empire for her?" Luca's eyes did not leave Grace. "Yes." The answer was immediate. Grace's breath broke. Adrian blinked, thrown by the lack of hesitation. Luca took 1 step forward. "I would trade every brick, every dollar, every name men fear for one more breath from her." Grace's eyes filled. Adrian sneered. "Then you are finished." "No," Luca said. Behind Adrian, Clara appeared in the stairwell, weak but standing, holding Salvatore's dropped gun. "For Matteo," she whispered. She fired once into the helicopter's engine. Sparks exploded. Adrian stumbled. Grace broke free. Luca caught her as the helicopter burst into flames behind them. He pulled her into his arms, turning his body away from the blast. Heat and snow collided around them. Adrian was captured before he could run. Salvatore died, reaching for power that had already abandoned him. And on the hospital rooftop, beneath snow and smoke, Luca held Grace like the world had narrowed to her heartbeat. "You came back," she whispered. His face was bruised, bleeding, and utterly undone. "I never left." Weeks later, Boston looked different to Grace. The preschool windows were repaired. Parents still whispered, but the children ran to her like nothing in the world could make her less safe than love. Lily lived at the Romano mansion with Clara, who was healing slowly, and Isabella, who had rediscovered the fragile miracle of grandmotherhood. Luca remained dangerous. That did not change. Men still lowered their eyes when he entered rooms. Enemies still disappeared from Boston's maps. The Romano name still carried fear through the harbor, but the mansion changed. There were toys in the sitting room, a rocking chair near the fire, a blue blanket folded carefully in a glass case, not as evidence anymore, but as proof that love sometimes arrived, wrapped in terror and rain. Grace returned to the mansion one snowy evening after work. She found Luca in the nursery, standing beside Lily's crib. The baby was asleep, one tiny hand wrapped around his finger. He did not move when Grace entered. "She trusts you," Grace whispered. Luca looked down at Lily. "She doesn't know better." "She does." He turned his head. Grace stepped beside him. "You think love makes people weak because everyone you loved was used against you?" His voice was quiet. "They were." "Yes." She touched his arm. "But Lily is not a weakness. Clara is not a weakness. I am not a weakness. His eyes lifted to hers. What are you? Grace smiled softly. Your reason to become more than what hurt you. The words hit him harder than any bullet. Luca looked back at Lily. I don't know how to be gentle. You knocked before entering the nursery. That is not gentle. It's a beginning. Outside, snow fell over the harbor. Inside, the mansion was warm and quiet. Luca reached into his coat and pulled out something folded. A small white blanket, new. On one corner, stitched in blue thread, was Lily Romano. On the other corner, smaller and more careful, was another name. Grace Bennett. Grace looked up, eyes shining. You kept my name on it? His voice was low. It was the name that brought her home. She touched the blanket. Then his hand, for once, he did not hesitate. He pulled her close, with the tenderness of a man still learning that holding did not have to mean owning. I love you, he said. The words were quiet, raw, almost painful. Grace looked at the feared Mafia boss of Boston, the man who had accused her, protected her, fought for her, and finally let himself be changed by her. I know, she whispered, his mouth curved faintly. You always say that because you make it obvious. Luca lowered his forehead to hers. In the crib, Lily slept peacefully beneath the soft glow of the moon-shaped night light. No gunfire, no locked doors, no rain-soaked doorstep, only snow, breath, and the strange, beautiful family none of them had expected to survive long enough to become. And outside the Romano mansion, beyond the guarded gates, Boston kept whispering about the night a Mafia boss found a baby on his doorstep with a teacher's name on the blanket. They called it scandal. They called it war. They called it impossible. But Grace knew the truth. Sometimes fate did not arrive gently. Sometimes it came crying in the rain. Sometimes it carried a name you thought belonged only to you. And sometimes it led you straight into the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, only to discover that even monsters could learn how to protect something without destroying it.